Debunking the Myth of Jim Crow Prosperity for All. A BTMP production. Integration is often viewed through the painful imagery of black children being spat on, cursed at, and attacked for simply trying to enter schools under Jim Crow. For some today, these scenes have led to the belief that segregation was a better alternative, a time of prosperity and self-reliance for Black Americans. But was this really the reality for the majority of our people? Jim Crow era in the United States is generally considered to have lasted from the late 19th century, circa 1877, after the end of Reconstruction, to the mid-1960s, when the Civil Rights Movement achieved landmark legislative victories like the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 restored rights that Black veterans of the Civil War and their white abolitionist allies in the Republican Party had fought for during the Reconstruction era. Together, they demanded equal treatment and legal protections under U.S. federal law, recognizing the critical role Black Americans had played in saving the nation from the Confederacy. Their combined efforts led to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1866, enacted over the veto of white supremacist President Andrew Johnson. First passed on April 9, 1866, and reenacted in 1870, this groundbreaking legislation was the first federal law to define citizenship and affirm that all citizens are equally protected under the law. The act was created in the aftermath of the Civil War to protect the civil rights of people of African descent, whether born in or forcibly brought to the United States. Spearheaded by radical Republicans in Congress, many of whom were staunch abolitionists, it aimed to achieve three key objectives. 1. To define American citizenship. 2. To establish the rights that come with citizenship. 3. To prohibit the denial of citizenship rights based on race, color, or prior conditions of slavery or involuntary servitude. This collaboration between Black leaders and their white allies laid a critical foundation for civil rights, but the promises of Reconstruction were cut short by the resurgence of white supremacy. The conditions Black children faced drove parents, teachers, and activists to fight for change. They demanded access to the same quality of education and infrastructure their tax dollars supported for white citizens. Their efforts culminated in landmark victories like Brown versus Board of Education, which declared segregation in schools unconstitutional. Yet the fight for integration came at a heavy cost, one that many falsely blame on the civil rights movement itself. Some claim that Black Americans were better off during segregation, pointing to prosperous enclaves like Greenwood in Tulsa or Auburn Avenue in Atlanta. But these success stories were exceptions, not the rule. And even these communities were not safe from white supremacist violence, as evidenced by the destruction of Greenwood during the Tulsa Race Massacre. The majority of Black Americans lived in poverty, with little access to health care, fair wages, or quality education. The civil rights movement was not a mistake. It was a necessity to fight against the systemic denial of basic human rights. The majority of Black Americans lived in poverty, with little access to health care, fair wages, or quality education. The civil rights movement was not a mistake. It was a necessity to fight against the systemic denial of basic human rights, a fight against taxation without representation. Segregation was not a golden age for Black America. It was a period of struggle, resilience, and oppression. The fight for integration was not just about entering white spaces. It was about ensuring equal access to opportunity for all. As we confront these myths, let us honor the sacrifices of those who fought for equality and remember that the fight was not in vain. Justice was, and still is, worth fighting for.